Hi, I'm Mana Moini, and you're listening to the HUMANATY Podcast. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. Today's topic is the power of connection. Connection's important. Research shows that social connectedness can lead to a better life, a longer life, and improved health. Joining me for today's conversation is Sarah Edwards. She's a designer, artist, social media guru, and community connector. She's also the founder and CEO of Minnesota Fashion Week and House of Sonder. Additionally, Sarah has won the Ad-Fed 32 Under 32, as well as multiple Best of awards from the City Pages for her work in fashion and the community. We're going to be talking to Sarah about her journey, the impact of social media, and the power of connection. Hi, Sarah Edwards.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Does everybody call you Sarah Edwards?
Yes, actually, it's kind of funny. It's funny, actually, I can't remember where I was in Northeast Minneapolis a couple of years ago, and this young woman came up to me. She's like, "Are you Sarah Edwards?" And I go, "Yeah." She's like, "My name's Sarah Edwards." She's like, "But whenever I get introduced or whatever, people think I'm you," or whatever. Anyway, it's funny.
That's really funny.
But yes.
Well, speaking of meeting people, you are known to be a community connector.
Yes.
What does that mean?
I think for me it goes back, probably like 12 to 15 years ago, when I first kind of did an event that kind of put me out there. The event was fun and all, but my favorite part of it was the connections that were made because of it. And I think what I like is connecting people that might not be in the same group, like people that might not, you know what I mean, know each other and have, I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, creatives, artists, we get so focused on whatever our medium is and we kind of like put ourselves all the way in it. So I like connecting people from different industries and perspectives and stuff.
Is that event where you kind of realized you wanted to be a community connector as part of your mission or purpose, or do you feel like you just kind of fell into it?
So if you knew the story of, how I grew up, where I grew up, it's almost laughable of how I ended up here because wasn't what I set out to do.
Really?
Yeah.
What path were you on?
Well, so I grew up in northern Minnesota in Grand Rapids, in the Iron Range, and I grew up with a single mom, and she's amazing, and she, she's a nurse. She worked in assisted living her whole life, and she's like the most kind, sweet woman. All that being said, I don't want to say we grew up poor, but like, it was always like a struggle. Money was always like hard. So when it came time for me to like, what do I want to do with my life? I was like a little kid that was also like a grown adult, meaning that I was like, well, I need to get health insurance and a 401k. Like I didn't have these big aspirational dreams. So I actually went to University of North Dakota and studied mechanical engineering.
Wow.
Because I was like, engineers get jobs. I was so I was like very fear-based. All of my decisions were fear-based. I need a job, I need insurance, I need security, stability. That's all I wanted. Even though my whole life I was interested in art and creativity, that felt like a luxury to me. That's what you do for fun. You don't do anything creative or artistic as a job. So I went to University of North Dakota, and people always laugh, I played golf. I'm a pretty good golfer. I played in high school and studied mechanical engineering for like a year in North Dakota, and I was just like, what am I doing? And I was miserable. I was talking to my mom one day, and she's like, well, you're so creative, Sarah. And she's always been so supportive, I think because she made a lot of sacrifice so we could do what we wanted to do. She wanted to see us pursue our passions. She's like, well, what about studying advertising? And what about Minneapolis? So long story longer, I transferred to Minneapolis and enrolled at the Art Institute in the advertising program. And that's kind of when I got exposed for the first time to Minneapolis and the creative community here. This is 20 years ago. So, I'm like, oh, Minneapolis has an art scene. We have a music scene, design. We have, lots of really great restaurants. And I just kind of fell in love with Minneapolis. And that was kind of when I first decided that I wanted to do an event called I Am Minneapolis, which was a celebration of our creative community. And that's kind of what launched everything else.
I see what you mean by you knew you wanted to do it, but also you fell into it.
Yes.
Are all connections good connections? Like, how do we decipher between if it's just like a quick connection, not a quick connection? Like, how do you decipher through that?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question, because lately I've found that, and I mean this in a very humble way, but like I know so many people and I struggle with like shallow relationships, but it's impossible to have 500 really close friends that know you really well. And it's also hard to find that balance within that. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I mean, people will be surprised. I really struggle with events because you can't really connect in a deep way like we're kind of doing right now, And that's what I crave. I think as humans, that's what we crave. I think that's why our, society's kind of depressed right now, is because we have so many connections, but we're just craving like real, authentic connections. So I've just been doing a lot of thinking about all of this, because as someone that's in the public eye, I get hit up all day, every day. It gives me so much anxiety because I want to connect really with all of these people, but I can't. And then I think sometimes when I put up boundaries, that's perceived a certain way. It's tricky. I don't have all the answers. I'm trying to figure it out.
So how do you recommend that we go about, because we're all busy, right? The older you get, there's so much on our plates. How do you prioritize maybe the connections you do want to grow?
Oh my gosh, that's really good. I think right now what I've been thinking about is friendships, and having friendships that don't involve work. And that's something that's really hard for me, because I can't help myself, like a lot of times a friend will be like, hey, like, do you want to like catch up and go on a walk? And then pretty soon, naturally, we're like consulting on their business for 2 hours. You know what I mean? I'm like, I want to just talk about your dog or like your mom, or you know what I mean? I don't want to talk about work all the time. So I think I've been trying to figure out like who fills my cup up when I'm with them, like who do I get energy from when I'm with them friendship wise, and who drains me. And that's where I'm trying to like find that balance right now. And it's tricky because, again, I love learning about people and connecting with people. It's like my whole life. But it gets tricky as to what's a friendship, what's a work relationship, what's a, you know what I mean? It can be overwhelming. So I'm kind of working through that. And I think people would be surprised. A lot of people don't even really know who the friends are that I talk to all the time. Like a couple of them aren't on social media. Do you know what I mean? Like, and they're just the people that know me like better than anyone, and I really like that, and I feel safe there. But it's important to have those relationships.
I think because you're such a connector, and people who are connectors, that line between personal and professional and everything kind of gets mixed together.
Yes.
So I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Since you love talking about work, a work question.
Yeah.
But this is a fun one. You and your team put on a ton of community events.
Yes.
Where you've mentioned the secret sauce is bringing people together to create lasting, mutually beneficial connections. Which one of the many events that you do is your favorite?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I have a few different events that are my favorite. We do this one fashion show called I'm Fabulous, and the fun part about that event is all of our models are ages 60 plus. So like all of the models are, not your typical young model, but they have such incredible stories and they have such incredible confidence. And to see them walk down the runway empowered and have, also we live in a society that we're afraid to age. You know what I mean? And it's like aging is a privilege. To be able to age is a privilege, and being able to reinvent yourself at any stage of life. Like my favorite thing one year was this woman that I got to know. She's 83 and she's starting a business. And it's like, I think we have sometimes this perception that life ends at a certain age and you can't do anything, but like, I don't know. That's probably one of my favorites. One of my personal passions is just the aging community in general. I think that our society tends to like not value them, or they have so much to contribute and to offer, and we need to include them more in things. And I think I talk to my mom a lot about this because of the work she's done. Like basically helped people to end of life her whole life, which is, I can't imagine how hard that work is. But when I was talking to her about what she does, I was like, when you're in like these assisted living homes and everything, like what gets them excited? What gets them joyful? And she's like, human connection. I'm like, that's all we want, and to tell stories and to feel included and to feel, like you're a part of a community. So to answer your question, I think that I Am Fabulous event's one of my favorites, just because it's just so empowering and it reminds you that aging is really special and that they have so many stories to offer and knowledge. So
it's never too late to start something new.
It's never too late.
I had to tell myself that with the podcast.
Yes.
And also, what I think about when I hear you talk about this event is a quote that I saw somewhere, that every wrinkle tells a story.
Yes.
So there's so much beauty and so much knowledge to be had in aging. So
Yes.
I love that. I didn't know that event happens. So.
That one's really fun. I mean, there's a lot of ones. We've done an event where it's an art show where instead of buying art with money, you buy art with acts of kindness. And yeah, I like events that kind of spin things on their head a little bit. Like with fashion, you almost always see young people on the runway. So a fashion show where everyone's like a little older and empowered is just cool to me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you why these events are important for the community, but what I'm hearing is every event for the most part has like a message, whether it's embracing your age or embracing kindness, embracing differences. I've been to some of your fashion shows, different styles, different personalities, different ages, races.
Yes.
It's just really wonderful. And I think it's so important to shine light on that in our community.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the connections that are built at those events.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, I think it's like, it goes back to growing up. I think that I never wanted anyone to be left out. And my mom was the best, but if she was ever strict about anything, it was just being kind. She's like, if you see someone getting teased, I expect you to go up and like speak up, So it was from a young age, she was like, it was really important that everyone was included. To the point where one time, again, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, and I had a birthday party when I was a little girl. I can't remember if it was at like Pizza Hut or something, and I think I could invite 10 people, my mom said. And I was like, I felt so bad because there were like however many kids in our class. I'm like, how can I only invite 10? So what happened is I invited everybody, and it was like 50 kids. What happens when you have good intentions of inviting everybody, there's not enough pizza for everyone. So it's like stuff like that. Sometimes it's funny how sometimes it shows up in my adult life because I'm like, everyone's invited. But I'm like, okay, then you have to be able to organize something with everyone involved. So that's something I thought was kind of funny. But I think with what's interesting too is, especially as we're going into an election year, I think what's important for me is having people in my life that don't see eye to eye. Like, I never want to be in an echo chamber. Like, as soon as I feel like I'm around everyone that thinks the same, talks the same, whatever, I'm like, I need to be around a very wide range of types of people in all aspects, because I want to be able to form my own thoughts and opinions. And I think sometimes if you only are with people that think the same, talk the same, have the same experiences, then you're just not exposed to. And I think in order to make any change or impact in life, in the community, in the world at large, you have to have every different point of view perspective involved. That's the only way anything will get done. And that's hard because, I have people in my life that are like the rightest of the right and the leftist of the left and everywhere in between. And I value being able to listen deeply to how and why their opinions are formed from their lived experiences or from where they grew up or how they grew up or whatever it might be. All that being said, I think that's like with my events too. It's like, I want CEOs and lawyers and accountants, and I want artists, and I want creatives, and I want janitors, and I want everybody. It's funny because, I think a lot of the events, people show up, and there's a lot of I'd say cool people, cool fashion, cool whatever, to the point where this one person who considers themselves middle-aged and not stylish is like, am I cool enough to come to your event? I'm like, absolutely, you're so cool, So it's like, I never want anyone to feel left out in that regard. And if I find someone that looks like they're not connecting with anyone, I'll purposefully go out and make a conversation or start a dialogue.
I think one thing you said around, building connections with people who aren't necessarily like us, to me, it feels like over the last couple of years, it's just society's kind of moved toward finding people that are like us only because everything was in turmoil and it just felt safer.
Totally.
So I think more than ever, these events, whether it be your events or any community events, do bring together people from very different backgrounds. And that's a forum where you can make a connection that you otherwise in our daily lives, we don't have a lot of outlets where we might run into someone different than ourselves. So I think that's really, really important.
Yep.
Being in the public eye can be tough.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can speak to that. You're very open about your mental health journey, especially on Instagram.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important to be transparent about that journey? And have you found that it's helped people?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to me anyway to be transparent because the way I see it, everything has pros and cons, right? And if you're only talking about the pros and you're not talking about the cons, then you're creating a false narrative. So, for example, I think that, with social media, having a platform, whatever, of course there's pros with that. There's a lot of cons. And if you don't talk about that, you kind of create this fake reality for people of wow, your life looks really glamorous. But I think with mental health and social media, I could talk about that for hours. It's my favorite thing to talk about, dinner parties. It goes back to having a mission. So for me, mine is connecting. I get into rooms that some people can't get into because of my social influence, if you will. I get invited to things, I get whatever. And I like to use that to help other people and connect, right? And to listen and to be in those rooms. I think the hardest thing is you're constantly under a microscope and being judged. It could be on your appearance, I remember one time I had posted a photo after I was working out in a yoga class, and someone was saying I was promoting diet culture or something. And you know what I mean? And things can just get twisted and out of context so quickly. And I talk openly about, I get Botox. And I do. And I don't think anyone should get Botox if they don't want to. But if they want to, I think they should. You know what I mean? And I don't want to pretend that that I'm not self-conscious about things, or that I don't worry about things or worry about what people think. But where I try to really live in it is showing that I struggle with it and I'm figuring it out every day, and that I don't have the answers. And I think with, I just think about young folks, and especially young women navigating this. Can you imagine being a young girl? I consider myself a fairly well-adjusted 38, almost 9-year-old woman, and it's hard for me. So I think that we have kind of a responsibility to talk open about these things. But it's funny, I was talking to someone the other day about the idea of expecting these people with platforms to be perfect, but then it's perfect by who? Do you know what I mean? Because it's like everyone has a different idea of what perfect means. Are you the perfect model of, mental health, or the perfect model of a community citizen or whatever? So it's like, I'm all about imperfection, and it's claustrophobic to try to live up to thousands of people's ideas of what you should be. It's exhausting. I'm working on it. I'm not there yet, but I'm actively like, I can't please all these people. It's too much.
Everyone has an opinion, but
Yeah.
yours is the one that matters the most.
Yes.
I like what you said about deciphering everything through the lens of like what your purpose is
Yes.
on that platform or in life.
Yep.
I think that is a really nice compass
Yes.
for how to deal with those things. How do you show yourself kindness on days that are tough?
Oh my God. That's a great question. How do I show myself kindness on days that are tough? I think that I try to remind myself of those moments when I'm really proud of good I've done or things I've, accomplished for other people or community. I think there's always voices both in my own head and then voices on social media, that I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Like, there are world catastrophes happening all day, every day. I personally, and I talk about this online, so I can talk about it here, like, I have severe depression with just like the state of the world half the time. But guess what? If I just lay there in bed depressed, like, what good does that do? So I have to find joy in life and in things and in people and community to like get up and go. And I can easily, and I'm going to be very vulnerable, I can easily get in like a depression cycle when it's just too much negative news. And I know a lot of us suffer from that. And my point in talking about this is you kind of have to protect yourself sometimes. And it's really hard because, again, you want to do so much. And there's also, you're one person. So the way I've been kind of managing that lately is just focusing on doing my best and having an idea of what that means and knowing that I can't fix everything. One of my friends talks about kind of picking a lane. Some people's lane might be climate change. Some people's lane might be about animals or the elderly or whatever it is. It's like, find something you care a lot and like put a lot into that. For me, it's complicated because it's like community, and that intersects with everything. But I think finding people that are doing really great things and supporting them and amplifying them is a way that I, find joy. And I think that if I could do what I do and not have social media, that would make me very happy. But I don't know if that's possible.
Well, I think what I'm hearing you say is giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
To just be. And I hope you find solace in just knowing that you're probably touching somebody's life with social media, even though there's so much, negativity out there. I did want to ask you if there was a specific story, like a negative interaction that you've had on social media that you were able to spin and make it a positive learning experience, something positive you could show to the rest of your platform.
Yeah, actually, this story is interesting because in this story, I was the one that was being kind of a bully. And that's vulnerable to share too, but I want to be really honest here in hopes that it helps people. But like, there was this girl I was following and her life just seemed so perfect. And it started to bother me because I was like insecure at the moment, like I felt like my life wasn't as good as hers, and I found myself, and I don't even really know her. And like, I just found myself comparing myself to her highlight reel, which we all do. And I'll never forget, and this was probably 6 or 7 years ago. It was a while ago. But I wrote her a message and I was like, do you even like do anything for other people? Or are you just like selfish and like whatever? And I immediately, after I sent that message, I was like, oh, like it felt gross. she didn't do anything to deserve me writing a mean message. And she, you know what I mean? And it was me projecting my insecurity or my jealousy or whatever onto her. And if I do that and I consider myself, aware or whatever, think about how much that happens all day, every day. Like people projecting their insecurity, their jealousy, they're hurt by someone or something and they need a place to get it out. And it's so easy to get online these days and say that. And so for me, in a weird way, and I ended up apologizing to her, and I was like, I'm sorry. I'm like, your life just seems so great. And I was really honest. My point in sharing that is that sometimes if I get a negative message or comment, I just think that there's something about me or whatever that might be triggering to someone else, or maybe my life looks really great. It's not in the moment. So I think, again, we have to remind ourselves that we're all, sharing tiny little bits and pieces of our lives on social media, and it paints a picture in however someone wants to interpret it, and it's weird. It's really weird.
What I appreciate about that story is that you took some time to self-reflect and then took ownership.
Yeah.
I think if even like 10% of the population took ownership, we would be in a better place. It's tough. It's tough to self-reflect, and then it's even tougher to go, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, and it's like at the end of the day, we're all struggling with insecurities or traumas or whatever it is. And we're also running around with like a comparison machine telling us how we're not good enough all day, every day. So those mixed together is not good. So like when I think of world peace or whatever, as cheesy as it sounds, it starts here. And you have to wake up, you have to love yourself deeply. You really do. And then you can put that out into the world. If you start with a place of negativity or hate or anger or fear or ego or whatever, it's just going to trickle into everything. And again, I'm saying this as someone that aspires to be better. I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it. But again, I think with technology and social media, we have to implement some sort of rules and regulations with it. It's like the wild, wild west. And people can just go, like you can literally be walking and having a great day, and then someone will be like, I don't like your face. Do you know what I mean? And it can just ruin your day or ruin your week in a minute. And so if you don't love yourself, if you don't have self-confidence, self-worth, whatever, those comments are going to really hurt. You have to like know yourself. And I saw some celebrity talking about he was at the airport or something, and he was with his kids, and someone came up and was taking photos, and he was just like, will you leave me the F alone? And then, of course, this gets spinned into how he's this monster, and the internet tears him apart. And it's like, that stuff frustrates me, because it's like, I've been in that moment. I'm not comparing myself to, a celebrity like that, but I was at a yoga class, and this young girl came up, and she's like, hi, Sarah, blah, blah, I follow you on social media, and this and that. And I was like, straight up like, I don't want to talk to you. And like, that was very uncomfortable for me in the moment, but I'm like, this is like my space to just like not be on, And she probably is like, wow, she was so rude, But that goes back to, I might just have to have people think I'm rude sometimes, and just, I know I'm not, you know what I mean? I know what my intention is in that moment. It's to do yoga and like have some peace.
You mentioned making sure and understanding yourself, loving yourself. I think another piece of that, bringing it back to the connections piece, is the connections you have in your life.
Yes.
Sometimes you do need other people to step in and lift you up.
Yes.
And so it's really important to have the right people, the right tribe, connections, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really important too to have people that you can just completely relax around. Like for myself, it's hard because I'm on a lot and it's exhausting. Most of my day job is leading in meetings, doing pitches, clients, being being on, and same with events. So like I need my space to be goofy and silly and, you know, weird and, you know, and just not have anyone care or think about it. And I can just, and again, I have those spaces. They're very important to me. But I think we all need places that we can just be complete, authentic selves and get weird and be silly and not worry about what anyone thinks. And it's just hard these days. It's really hard when you're under a microscope.
Well, and those are the spaces where you feel the safest.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
yeah. And we're all craving that space to feel safe. So again, social
absolutely.
media does not provide that. And I'm not anti-social media by any means. I think it serves a lot of good in the world. It allows a lot of really great things to happen, but it's like any tool created throughout history. It can be used for good or evil.
We do need those real life connections
Yes.
to ultimately feed our soul.
Absolutely.
You have launched a lot of things in your career. I know you are launching a clothing line.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
What would you tell somebody who is fearful of following their dream and doesn't know where to start?
Sometimes I hesitate with my honest answer, but I'll just say it anyway. I just go for it, and I just do it, and I do it imperfectly. And what I do is I learn from that, and then I improve upon it. Like, even right now, okay, I own an agency and run Fashion Week, whatever, but I never set out and said, like, I want to own a creative agency. I just did a little event 10 years ago that evolved into an agency. And so sometimes you might think you have to have all the pieces of the puzzle put together, but sometimes the most beautiful part is something that you aren't even planning for. And it happens organically out of this initial getting started phase. So my advice is to just start with whatever it is. You know, for me, usually how I start is I buy a domain. The amount of domains I own is hilarious because, I mean, 75% of them are just sitting there. But that's usually step one for me. I don't know. Or I'll build a website. I've built lots of websites for lots of random ideas I've had. But there's a quote that I like that's a little cheesy, but I think it's popular for a reason, is everything you want is on the other side of fear. And it's so true. You wouldn't want it so bad if it wasn't so scary. You wouldn't want it so bad if it didn't make you, want to vomit, but you're so curious what it might be like if you could maybe figure it out, if you could maybe do it. That feeling is so satisfying. But I'm also, again, being completely real, I'm like trying to check myself of like this, I have too much of that. Like, I'm like, can I do it? Can I figure it out? It's like that challenge where sometimes I'm like, maybe I should just go do a puzzle. Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe like just chill. And like, that goes back to the inner peace thing. So like, it's funny because I'm very much like, chase your dreams, go for it, whatever, or not. I was talking to someone the other day about, I think they were kind of comparing themselves to me a little bit. And I was really honest. And I was like, there's so many times I would love to be in your position with, you have your job and you know exactly what's expected of you. You have maybe a quieter life, a smaller circle. That sounds peaceful, So I think, again, there's this perception, and it goes back to comparison is the thief of joy, trying to just fall in love with your life and yourself and try and celebrate other people's wins. I think when you celebrate other people's wins, it brings you a lot of joy too.
And I think sometimes when people are happy in their own life, it's almost like they feel like they need to be doing something else.
Yes.
By comparing their lives to others, and especially in that social media world, right? You might be content, and then after you go on Instagram, you're not. Because you've just seen all these different things, and ultimately, everyone should do what they want to do.
Exactly.
One of the things I've learned in my journey with the podcast is surrendering. Kind of goes back to what you said, like learning and keeping moving on
Yep.
from it and doing
Yes.
better.
Yes.
I think also part of that is, you have to let go of control a little bit. So
Yeah.
my biggest word over the last couple months has been surrender,
Yep.
because you can only control so much, and it's okay.
It's okay.
It'll get better next time. So I can totally relate to that.
Yeah. The other advice, too, that I always give to people if they're thinking about doing something or starting something, I kind of laugh because it's maybe not the most inspirational, but it's very real to me, is picture your worst case scenario. So, like, for example, when I was thinking of starting my business however many years ago, and I was terrified going back to my childhood of, like, not wanting to be an entrepreneur or creative, like, just wanting security, like, entrepreneurship's opposite of that. But when I was thinking about it, I was really like, what's my worst case scenario? And my worst case scenario was like, the business fails, I'm a huge failure, loser, everyone thinks I'm dumb, I have to like move out of Minneapolis to northern Minnesota, live with my mom, and get a job surfing buffalo wings at the local bar. And I was like, it's not that bad. Like, I could do that. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, is that my worst case scenario? Like, that's not that bad. Usually our worst case scenarios aren't that bad. That's why I'm like, I think pretty fearless with starting stuff and doing stuff, is I'm always like, what's the worst that could happen? Doesn't work out. You know what I mean?
That's interesting, because I don't know if a lot of people think about the worst, because it's so fear-based.
Yeah.
But I think when you do think of the worst case scenario, you kind of go, huh.
Even
I should
like
just try this.
Even right now, if I lost everything, whatever, it's like, I don't know, maybe I'd go move in with my sister for a while. That could be fun. We'd have like a little sister bond moment. She's watching this, she'll be like, hell no. But you know what I mean? But I think it's important because it's like in our heads, I don't know what we think when we think of our worst case scenario, but it's usually not as bad as we think it is.
I appreciate that. So one of the things we've been asking everyone who's been on the show to kind of close it out is for you to share a story of kindness, either something that's happened to you or that you've witnessed that just has left an imprint on you and has impacted you and maybe how you choose to act today.
Oh gosh, there's so many. There's a lot of kindness in the world. Sometimes I like the most simple ones, My favorite lately is just messages when people are like, you're doing a great job, or I see you. And the reason I bring those up is I think sometimes when we think of these acts, they're huge and whatever. But like for me, like little moments when people are like, I see you, that makes me like fall to my knees. Because isn't that what we all want, is to like just be seen for who we are? And so for me, there's been a couple moments recently where like this one woman like grabbed my arm. She's like, I see you. And I was just like started bawling. And yeah, I think we can overcomplicate kindness, and it's so simple. I'm trying really hard to really be present at checkout lines. Like, I don't know, that feels like an act of kindness to me, like going through Target or grocery store or something, like looking humans in the eyes and saying thank you and maybe asking how their day is or whatever. I think that when we live in this constant technology-obsessed world, that we have lost our basic manners, and I'm not trying to poo-poo the younger generation, but, being able to, like, look up from your technology and engage with humans and know how to, like, have conversations and make eye contact is, in my opinion, an act of kindness. So I hope that we can practice that a little more, myself included.
I love that. And I think about the smallest act of kindness could literally change somebody's life.
You never know.
You just never know what people are going through. You just never know. You might literally change their day, their life, their hour. So
Absolutely.
I think that's really beautiful. So thank you for shining a light on that.
Yeah.
I really want to thank you for being here today.
This is amazing. Thank you.
I want to thank you for being so authentic and real. And I think people are really going to resonate with this conversation. I think it's really important for our community and just people listening that it's okay not to be perfect.
Yeah.
And it's important to have connections and the right connections and human interaction. And I'm just so excited to share this conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is amazing.
I want to leave the listeners with this. Connections are powerful, especially in today's society where we spend so much time behind a screen. Make sure to water and grow the important connections in your life. Also, join a group or try something different so that you can make new, beautiful connections. Every connection is an opportunity to learn something new and then take it from there. Thank you for connecting with us and being a part of this community. I hope you have a wonderful day.